What does it mean to be the enemy of my truth? What does it mean to be the enemy? How does that show up in your everyday? Does it show up as guilt, as shame? Does it show up as deep fear of not meeting others' expectations or your own? We explore all of these emotions and feelings in the depths of what the enemy of your own truth looks like in each episode, in different scenarios, through guest speakers, through client interview, and through my own question and answers with all of you. So glad to be here today and to talk a little bit about what we are creating with this podcast. I have my co-host here, Heather Stokes, who not only is the voice on the other side of the microphone and the screen, but someone who has been here for this journey of creating the work that I'm doing and stepping into the path that I'm creating in the work that I do.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, Heather.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this podcast, and I know this is going to inspire and help a lot of people in their life journey.
Yeah, Heather, I find that collaboration in the journey of day-to-day life and not feeling so alone is the fire behind wanting to create another avenue to reach people and to feel connected. And even in our conversations together has created the desire and the idea to put our conversations together and share them with others. As you and I have curiosities and questions, we know that there are more out there that have the same questions and wanting to sit in a space of vulnerability to ask them and to hold space for others in that journey.
Yeah, and I hope as we go along, our listeners will ask us questions or send us comments and questions that we can continue to answer, because I know I'm super curious. I have lots of things I want to ask you and talk about, but I know there's probably stuff we'll miss, and there'll be audience questions that we'll love to answer and you'll love to answer. So I encourage that, and we should encourage our listeners to make sure they comment and ask questions, and we're happy to answer those.
Yeah, I love it. And I think starting out with this first or second episode, as we'd like to maybe look at it, what we're creating today and sharing is a little bit about what to expect and what we can share. And it's really going to be a space where we are diving into ideas, questions about the non-physical life, what it means to step into the spiritual space for oneself, and not being afraid to ask the questions, and being curious and having the desire to be curious. And so whether we have guests on the podcast, bringing them in, our viewers' question and answer episodes, and then simply Heather, you and I talking, and bringing in guest speakers to share their journey.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we can start with as we are getting our legs with this podcast is a little bit about who I am and where the foundation of my work starts. One of the basic fundamentals is perhaps talking about the difference of what it means to be a psychic and what it means to be a medium. So through all my teaching and with the incredible teachers that I have worked with, the core difference is in the way that we receive and perceive information. So my understanding and what I have come to know is my psychic faculties show up in a way that I perceive information around an individual. I perceive information around their energy field. And that can look a lot like I can look into energy of their past, I can look into their present, and I can look forward into the future of potentials. And I find that when I start to tap into somebody, it's pretty instant for me. I might see things such as a job change, a change in a relationship. I might get an essence and see a snippet in my head or a picture of a relationship that ended a long time ago, or a feeling of you going through a childhood experience and seeing a little flash in my mind of perhaps when you were young. I get the feelings and emotions of the people that I look at. I can look at somebody and feel as though they have this energy echo, this energy shadow of feeling happy or sad, or that like the last week or 2 weeks has been really heavy for you, and I can just feel it as though it just cloaks their whole energy, like the clothes that they're wearing. And I also want to be very clear that in the ethics of this work, there's always a place to understand and hold boundaries, that we just don't go in. I don't read somebody's mind or I'm reading that energy. It's when I sit into an agreement with somebody through the professionalism and the ethics and the agreement of this work that I am granted permission to tap into someone's energy, to look around. Because there's a great deal of vulnerability with that, and there needs to be a respectful boundary. And asking permission always to look into someone's energy field, whether it's the past, the present, or looking towards the future. And a lot of times there can be fear when someone that can look into energy towards, say, the future, that they don't want to know things that are going to be, traumatic, or if there's something to fear. And when I am tapping into someone's energy field and looking at them psychically, seeing the energy, I am seeing full potential of what serves their energy to their highest, what allows them to step into their full potential as the most positive outcomes. And there may be perhaps visions that I see or information that I see that best serves the individual, or energy that may allow them to get there in the shortest amount of time versus taking the long way. And that could come in with a relationship that we're sitting in, or a job that we're no longer feeling inspired to be at. And a lot of times, the information that I see, 9 times out of 10 is information the client already holds. So as I am revealing what I'm seeing, and I'm stepping into that space and that agreement with the client, and I'm sharing what's coming to the surface, there's a very strong, overwhelming knowingness. The client already holds that as truth. It's just when we are in a place of stress, when we are in a place of uncertainty, we are very, very disconnected from our inner being and our soul that has our truth. It's always there with us all along. It always has been, always will be. So my goal is to really bring you and line you up with that truth. So psychic information is also very fast. And so as the information may come to me, can be very a quick draw to show information, a yes, a no, a potential relocation. Do I stay in this relationship or not? They can be very quick answers, but there can be a deeper explanation as we sit in that space together, trying to make sense of why I have what I have for the individual, and allowing them to ask me questions more about that.
That's great. And when you talk, so I have a question on mediumship. So I've had mediums connect with past loved ones, and I know you do that. And I always wonder, is the person who's passed or who we're connecting with, are they just trying to give messages that, hey, I'm here, or can they actually give you future looking things for your client? Like, can they say, Heather should really invest here, or should do this with this relationship? Like, what are you supposed to be getting for the client?
That's a great question. And I want to go back a minute and share the difference of mediumship. And we'll start with that. So where I said psychic information, I am perceiving information on the individual. Through mediumship, I'm receiving information and messages from spirits, a receiving information. They blend with me, and I receive information and memories from spirit. It's not coming from me to see directly into the person. So to tie into that question, Heather, spirit, I find, is always here to let their loved ones know that they're certainly okay. They've been able to release the shell, the jacket, the weight of this beautiful human experience that the soul comes into experience and grow through the suffering and learning. And so when I am connecting with spirit and receiving those messages, they're very much here to just say, hey, I'm here with you. I'm nudging. I'm here to support your process. I find there's a sensationalization to when our loved ones come through. First, we want to have connection to know that they're okay. But the majority of the time that I feel spirit comes in as you're connecting with their loved ones is because their loved ones are in a very stuck place in their human life. They're in a place of suffering emotionally and mentally, because spirit will always show me the emotional condition of the person sitting in front of me that's living. And what I find is that your loved ones, whether they are in spirit or that they're still living here with you, we want them to not be suffering. We want them to live in a place of being certain, of being loved, knowing that they are on the right path in their life. And so I find spirit comes in to nudge, to show signs, to say, pull us from a relationship that's no longer healthy for us, remove us from a job that doesn't allow us to know our worthiness. They're always here to nudge us, though they can't step in the way and do that for us. They're here to constantly guide us to say, hey, we're here, we're watching, we've never left your side. Believe in yourself, listen to yourself. Versus like the secret message, like they have some big secret to share with us. It's really just here to help us be in this human experience on this physical plane, stepping into our highest emotional, mental space.
How often do both abilities collide? So if you're doing an intuitive session, do you ever get spirit coming in so you mix the two? Mm-hmm. Or are you shutting one off? How does that work if you have a loved one coming through, but you're really just doing an intuitive session?
I think as the medium and the psychic, as the person stepping into the space, you have to create that boundary with spirit, that you are stepping into a space with your client that is the foundation is intuitive work. We're helping guide them in the living. We're helping guide them in their living path right now. Where mediumship is something, if I'm working with someone through mediumship, there is an agreement ahead of time that I'm going to hold space, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to create a link with spirit to come in, and there's an agreement. So it's really important to kind of keep those things separate, that if someone's coming in for intuitive guidance or a psychic reading, that it's strictly I am perceiving information and using my psychic abilities through my clairs. Where the mediumship is a very specific link that really has to be agreed upon in the connection, not only with the client, but the medium. And spirit knows that. Spirit's here to always honor their loved ones being here. Now, I will say that doesn't mean spirit doesn't try to come in. Like I might leave that mental door open and I feel them come. But if that does take place, I will ask permission to the client sitting there with me, if it's okay that I share a message, because I have someone here in spirit that wants to be a part of this session, that wants to kind of come in, but always asking permission if that's okay. It's super, super important to do that, to establish those boundaries in a session.
So what kind of expectations can your clients have with a mediumship reading? Like, what is the outcome of that meeting?
Yeah, so expectations and, the perimeters of creating a session through mediumship. And one of the things I always share is that, is it's the medium, the client, and spirit. There's this triangle happening that spirit's always in charge. And so whether you are a seasoned medium or you are a student of mediumship and you're developing, can be this tremendous amount of pressure that you have to deliver, that the messages are going to be crystal clear and you're going to have validation of connection with a loved one. The most important thing we can do is to release expectation, and that the medium really shares this and the client coming to sit really understands this, that we are just here and the medium is the conduit for whoever and whatever spirit wants to come through to deliver. So we are there to really just feel what's going to come in. When there is a sense of urgency, when we are dealing with grief, when we are really wanting something to happen, it actually causes an energy of resistance. And resistance is usually seeped in the emotions and in the feelings of fear because we're just wanting something. And it's a very dense energy that can surround the client. And as the medium, we feel that resistance, whether they're still dealing with grief, which is a natural process for those living, to really wanting to expect their loved one to give them the certain sign to the medium. It really creates a sense of creating the opposite effect of what you're wanting, because again, the medium's not in charge of what spirit wants to deliver. What we want to create is a sense of flow, no expectation, which allows ease of spirit coming in to blend with the medium to deliver what it wants to deliver. Remember, in any session, we're not there to get what we want. Spirit delivers what is needed. And so when we can be as open as possible to connecting with our loved ones, we are usually pleasantly surprised to not only connect to those that we want to, but more outside of that we didn't even think about.
And let's talk a little bit about the intuitive psychic sessions. So that was really very descriptive about the mediumship, and actually I learned more just listening to you than I have in the past. So what about, let's flip over to the intuitive psychic sessions. What can a client expect? A lot of people sit down across from me and they're like, what's about to happen? There's nerves. There's is grandma going to come in, or is this what's happening? A lot of people don't know the difference. And so I think this is really helpful for the audience to understand.
Yeah. So let's see if I can try to explain this. And I think at some point, Heather, as you and I are starting to really naturally go into this, one thing that my audience members and people who do know me is sometimes I have to search for my words. And what I mean by that is that I'm dyslexic, and sometimes I'm searching for the things that I need to say. And when I get into a channeled state, it comes with ease. And so as my audience is listening to this, and you might hear a break, or I might not always put things cohesively together, the patience that I have to have with myself to understand that and to explain myself. So talking about an intuitive psychic session is really about this invitation to step into a space with me that allows me to see the truth inside of you, that allows me to extract what your highest is trying to walk towards and step into every day. But because we are so disconnected from ourselves through a relationship that is toxic, through a job that we are no longer inspired by, through family members that don't allow us to show up for who we are authentically. There's so many different variables about why we're disconnected from our inner truth. And I really invite individuals to come into these sessions so I can allow them and us together allow you to see your truth together. So yes, do I see things psychically in your field? Do I see potentials of how a relationship may move forward and heal, or move apart and heal in its own way to go your own way? Do I see a potential move or a change in a job? Yes, I see these things in your energy field based on the emotions that I see deep inside of you. It's almost as though it's a road sign. And as I have permission to look intuitively around you and through you, I will then bring these possibilities to the surface. Because remember, no matter who you go work with that can read energy, you are your highest form of knowing. You hold the ultimate truth. You are an individual with absolute autonomy. And what I mean by that is the power of free will. And so no matter who we go talk to, and this, power of suggestion, or, somebody told me this and it's an absolute, the only absolute is the energy you hold for yourself and the powerful force of your own free will to change your course at any given second. And so when you step into a session with, say, myself or somebody else, I am looking at your energy in that exact moment of a potential that's going to happen because I see into the future. You could leave my office or a session and forget your car keys. And in that split second, you've just changed your whole trajectory. So the power is always yours. The direction is always there. But what I hope to accomplish in a session is that we unlock the truth that's already inside of you. Your answers are already there. And I allow you and kind of hold my hands out to you to say, look, here they are. And it's okay to look at them. It's okay to say, this is what I see. And there's always this deep essence and this deep feeling that you know this to be true. And that's the most powerful thing that I can offer, is that you see your own truth and know what direction to take. Because nothing will be more powerful than you knowing it for yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really important to point out too what people feel during these sessions. I know, like, when I've had a session with you, it's emotion rushes in as you see me and as you read me. It's just this feeling of, wow, Anne gets me, can see me, and really understands who I am. Sometimes it's a wave of like emotions where there's tears or there's joy. Like, what do you think people should expect? Is it expect whatever feeling comes up?
I think it ties back to like having no expectations, which is really hard for us to not have expectations, that it's a one and done. It's, instant gratification of like, how do I heal this? And I think one of the most important things is setting the expectation that for the first time, you are probably going to be confronted or shown an inner truth in yourself regarding a certain situation, and we have to sit with that. It can be an overwhelming flooding of information that I might, in the first 20 minutes, be able to see what's going on for you without you giving me much of anything. I can see a potential situation taking place, whether it's in your relationship or at a job, and I can pull those feelings and the truth to the surface. And it can feel very raw, but yet so true. And I find that as I am able to extract that information and look into the energy field of an individual, there's a knowingness, but there's also a gentleness that you're safe to be in the space with together with us. That as we pull this to the surface, this information, perhaps your truth, and perhaps that truth looks like that I see you, for instance, a client in a relationship with an individual or in a partnership that I know is no longer serving the energy. And I see that deeply because I see the sadness and I see the loneliness, and then I start to begin to see, and I go back to the past, and the past can look like the last couple weeks, the last couple months, the last couple years of you being extremely lonely, extremely feeling isolated. And then I start to see sense of not being seen or heard. And it's almost like a vacuum of energy around you that I start to look at. And as I slowly share this with you, with the client, there's quiet. There can be silence, because it's as though that this exposed truth comes to the surface in a very safe way, but in a way that I allow the two of us to look at it together. And perhaps that's all we do in the first session. We just absolutely look at the truth, because it can be really terrifying to know that the truth that is shown in that first session is not something we can act on or change anytime soon. And I want to say that that's okay, whatever that might be. So we sit there together and we look at it and we hold it and we feel it. And sometimes that's just all we do the first time. And as we move forward and we start to have confidence in ourselves and we start to trust who we are, because one of the biggest themes that comes in the work that we do together is I bring you home to trusting yourself again. Because if we don't trust ourselves, then how do we know what we want? How do we know that we're not walking away from something that's not serving us? If we don't trust ourselves, then it's hard to really know what our truths are that are deep inside of us. And so that takes time and work together. And there's no greater gift on an inner being level and for your soul and for your loved ones in spirit to know that you've come home to your own truth, and not the truth of your family, not the truth of your partner, but your truth. And when you come home to that, when you line up with it, there's nothing that's not clear anymore. Everything becomes clear. When you come home to yourself and your truth, everything becomes clear.
That's great, Anne. Thank you. What how do you typically handle skepticism or clients that may be nervous about what to expect?
I think, Heather, that's a great question. And I, I would, I always like to offer up that I think skepticism is a healthy piece of this work. It has to be. I think that skepticism is what allows us to parse out what's not feeling right and what is. And I think you really can't truly know how you're going to work with any type of healer, psychic, medium, anybody who reads energy until you sit with them. Let the session speak for itself. Let the energy of the person you're working with speak for themselves. Because the skepticism I find comes in based on what other people are saying, or did you have that experience? Like, what did you go through? And I think until you really step into a space and work with somebody who really has integrity and professionalism, that it's okay to be skeptical. I think skepticism and the energy around that is important until you feel as though you can line up with the person you're working with. And it's not your partner's skepticism. It's not your parents' skepticism. It's not what so-and-so talked about. It's a feeling that overrides any skepticism that you just know to be true. And I think there's nothing wrong with coming into a session with anybody you're working with, whether it's myself or somebody else, with a healthy sense of skepticism, because it's your guidance system to say something feels off. When you step into a session with somebody who you are truly connected with, there's no space for skepticism. It just is. And that's just a feeling that cannot be given to you. It's just created in that session with anybody who does energy work you're working with.
Awesome. Okay, great. Another, I guess, as we're wrapping up here, for someone who's listening, like, and considering booking a session with you, what practical advice would you give someone that so they can get the most out of the session with you? Is it keeping an open mind, having an open heart? Like, how would you describe what they need to bring into the session with you?
I think a couple of things would be, not only come in with an open mind and no expectations, but that puts on expectations to somebody to come in and be like, I have no expectations. I think it's okay to come in and be afraid. I think it's okay to come in and not know what to expect. I think it's okay to be really open. Because deep down, there's a part of us who just wants to get to the core of why we feel disconnected, why we feel like we don't know what we're doing in our lives. And I think it's okay to come in and say, okay, what is Anne going to bring to this session? What is she going to open up? Anybody coming in is because they're a lot of times they're at the end of their rope. The reason they might come in is somebody suggested, oh, go see Anne, or go see this person who does energy work or reads energy. So the best advice I would have is knowing that you're coming into a safe space. Come in with no expectations, as hard as that is. Come in with a healthy sense of skepticism, and come in knowing that whatever's going on deeply inside, whatever's happened in the past, the present, and what's going to happen in the future, know that you'll walk out with a deeper sense of who you are, and perhaps a little bit more comfort and ease in what you're doing stepping forward.
One thing I wanted to just bring up before we wrap here shortly is during a session, you always think of questions. Like I have in the past thought of like a million questions after the session, because I feel like you're just so engaged and enthralled and listening to you. And then afterwards, there's been many times I was like, oh, I wish I had asked Anne this question, or I wish I had asked this question. And so how do you propose people deal with that after, when they're like, oh, I didn't get to ask her? What are your thoughts on that?
It's such a great question, Heather, because I think that sometimes an initial session just has to be getting out all the feelings of hesitation and skepticism. And when you naturally feel comfortable with somebody, the questions are going to just become so abundant. And it's just important to be in the space of that first session, because so many times, as you become comfortable in the space with who you're working with, the questions will come, and they should come. There's a sense of wanting to protect yourself when you first go and work with somebody because you don't know. It's vulnerable. Are they looking inside of me? Do they really see the depths of who I am? So until we establish a sense of trust and a sense of ease with the person you're working with, I think the questions will continue to come up. They never stop. They never should. I always recommend to my clients that I work with regularly, and I will have a disclaimer about what I mean by regularly, that we keep a notebook of questions that pop into our head throughout the course of a day, a week, a month. So when we are checking in with each other and looking at the guidance of our life, we can go back on those questions that seem to pop into our head. And I always find that, do those questions come in through something that we want to know, or do our loved ones kind of come in and kind of prompt us to ask questions? And they're kind of one and the same a bit, but they're always interesting to see where they coming from. And so keeping a notebook of questions to ask, you can bring those into a session each time, so you remember and can kind of keep track of things that you want to ask. And a lot of times in those questions that you have written down, the answers will be shown to you by the time we meet again. A lot of times the answers will come to you, or they will be shown to you in your life, which is pretty cool. But I would expect the questions to not only not stop coming, but they will just progress, and they will get deeper and with more meaning and continue to guide you. Your own questions will guide you.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, do you have any other thoughts before we wrap up? I know we'll talk a little bit about maybe the next podcast, but anything final for the listeners around who you are, what you do, why you do it?
Yeah, it kind of leads me into the path that has brought me to where I am today, Heather, working and developing my psychic tools and abilities, which then led me to communicating with spirit through mediumship. As we have to build our psychic awareness and develop our clairs to be able to communicate with spirit and receive messages. And so as I've built these two tools of working with my psychic awareness and building my link with spirit through mediumship, it's brought me to this place to not only deeply work with the public and those living, but to heal those that are in this living physical space. That I have found this nudge or this guidance from spirit, those in spirit, to help those that are here. That it's less and less of connecting with those in spirit to bring in those connections, and more about being a link and a connection to help those in the living through my intuitive guidance, through helping them feel unstuck, to not be in a place of suffering. Because as I have worked with spirit, and they're in such a beautiful space of healing, of unconditional love, of feeling joy and flow in where they're at in the non-physical. There's such a need that I feel from spirit to make sure that their loved ones are doing and living in their highest potential without suffering. And there's this nudge through the work that I'm doing to have my focus be here in the physical and less in the non-physical, yet I reach into the non-physical world to help me with those living. So that leads me to the work that I do today, to be a living channel for those in the place to find clarity and to not be in a place of suffering and to live their full potential.
And as you say that, I have so many questions about what the non-physical world is and means and looks like and feels like. And I think that would be a great topic for another podcast, because I do feel like we come here and have the five senses. We have, that's just what we're taught, but there's this other realm that you live in. And, I think all of us have the ability to access. We just aren't taught that. And I would love to dive into that deeper with you, because I think that would be a very fascinating topic. So anyway, that's for another time. And you work a lot with both men and women, but a majority of your clients over the years have been women, and you're starting to see more and more men come in and have sessions with you. And coming up in January, you're going to be starting a men's group, which is very exciting. And I think you're going to talk about that on the next podcast, about what that looks like, what that means, who's co-hosting it with you. His name is Josh Verrill. And I think if you could just touch on that a little bit, what people might be able to expect on the next podcast about what that might look like, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So as, the audience expands and the work that I'm doing, I have found that my male clientele coming in and the need for connection is so needed. And the permission to be vulnerable, to share in that space with each other is just vital. And I'm so excited to see that door open with all of my clients in sharing that space, not only with more of a female-based clientele, but bringing in the space of all of my male clients, and that energy to be able to find community, to help each other find that voice and to step into that space. I'm honored to be stepping into a shared group with Josh Verrill, who we'll have on to the next podcast to share his story and how Josh and I came together on this journey together, and to watch what he's doing in this space to help others. It's just an honor, and I'm really excited to talk about that. So we'll totally get into that in one of our next episodes, and creating more of a dialogue and bringing on some guest speakers around men and spirituality and building that community.
Great. That's awesome. I can't wait to hear that. And I just want to say thank you for inviting me into your space. And this is going to get more and more interesting and fun as we go along. And I really appreciate you.
Yeah, Heather, absolutely. I'm so jazzed. And I want to thank all you that are listening to just be here as we are figuring this out. We're fumbling, stumbling, but we're so joyful to do it, and we're figuring it out. Any questions, please direct it to our podcast. We will be doing many question and answer episodes, and bringing on some clients to kind of share in this space too. So feel free to reach out at any point and send in your questions. But Heather, thanks for being here. Love the questions, and just excited to be on this journey with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye. Bye.